In this episode of the Decentralized Opportunity Podcast, we dive into mission based businesses. What are their advantages? What are their negatives? Is it the right move for you to align your business to your purpose? Well, stay tuned and find out. What is the difference between a mission driven company and a company that just has a mission statement?
I've been in lots of different companies. As a consultant, I get to see a bunch of companies. And one of my favorite, like passive aggressive things I like to do to entertain myself on the job is when I show up at their headquarters. It's always a pretty building and in a nice and, corporate park of some sort. And, the front's all glass and blah, 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 blah. But there's one thing every business has in common is if you walk into their headquarters, somewhere on a wall near the entrance in some sort of font is going to be their mission statement. We're going to be I don't know. What's Walmart's? Walmart's? We just talked about Walmart. What's their mission statement?
Well, it used to be if you're talking about Sam Walton, it would be satisfaction guaranteed at the lowest price.
We'll go with that. So that would be blasted on the wall in like type 400 font. And it would have, the founder, Sam, Walton underneath it or whatever. And I read every single company I've ever been into their headquarters, and I read it really carefully. And then I go, and as I'm working with this company, once again, this is passive aggressive. I never share these thoughts. I, 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 I get a feel for the vibe, how the company works, and if they're following their mission statement. And this is nothing against any company I've ever worked for or any company out there that makes a mission statement. But the conclusion I have come to is that a lot of companies' mission statements are kind of just like marketing material.
Yeah.
They're there to blast on your social media and to put on all your products, and people will, be familiar with your slogan or your brand or your mission statement.
Yep. So with Walmart, I just looked it up. It's our mission is to save people money so they can live better.
Yeah, absolutely. So a mission focused business, their job isn't to just make a mission statement. Their mission statement is the purpose of their company. And you'll have some profit first companies that will say they do that too. But just the words I used right then kind of tells you the priority: profit first. And now, this is not meant to be insulting. Again, I feel like I'm going into a weird deep dive suddenly, Tanner. So stop me if I'm going too far. But
No, love it.
so your traditional business, it's corporation, LLC, blah, 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 blah. If you get investors, if you take venture capital money, if you take friends and family, whatever, especially if you're a corporation, you are not only like supposed to drive for profit, you are morally and legally obligated to drive for profit for your shareholders. That's the point of your typical for-profit corporation. People invest in you, they give you their money, and they want a return on it. That means you have to drive for profit. You have to make your company more profitable with the funds that are given to you. Investing 101. A mission-driven business, they have the ability to focus less on sole profit and more on their mission statement. An excellent example of a mission-driven business mission statement is Patagonia. Patagonia is one of the most successful mission-driven businesses I have been able to find in the various readings and research I've been doing on this topic lately. And their mission statement is so simple. It's, we're in business to save our home planet. End mission statement. That what drives Patagonia is not the search for profit. They're not trying to branch into new product lines or get into new locales unless that will benefit them saving our home planet. If they find a new product line that could make them $1 billion next year, if they went into this product line, if they can't honestly say it fits their values and their mission statement, they won't pursue that venture. And it's not about providing value to your shareholders or to your investors. It's about that mission. Now, that doesn't mean you can't get investors, but we can get into that later. So normal mission statement for a corporation is kind of a guiding light. This is generally what they want to do and how they operate. A mission-based company, their mission statement is how they do business, period. And if some sort of venture or idea comes along that doesn't hit that mission statement, but will provide revenue, more likely than not, they won't take that opportunity.
So you mentioned that these are for profit. So I mean, I would assume a lot of the times when you think of mission-based companies or charities or different stuff, it's more nonprofit. Can you kind of dive a little bit deeper though into how the for-profit structure works, because again, like you were just talking about, it can seem a little counterproductive at times, where if you're whole, you would assume that business is there to make money and survive, compared to only, serving whatever the general purpose or value or mission of that entity would be.
Yeah, absolutely. So traditionally, we hear you have for profit or nonprofit, but what a lot of people don't realize or dig into is there are multiple types of business structures under each one of those categories. So things like the company's Honest Tea, Patagonia, Cliff Bar, Once Upon a Time, other for-profit mission-driven businesses, they really took advantage of this relatively new corporate structure for tax purposes called a PBC, which is a public benefit corporation. It's a specific type of legal structure that allows the company to not only chase profit, to grow and expand, but also to have some leeway in that, in the sense that they are driving towards their mission. Some of the pros of a PBC kind of example is it really differentiates them from competitors. There's a strong brand loyalty with a customer base that really truly believes in your mission as a PBC. And once again, it allows you to let go of things that might have brought your investors more ROI in exchange for progressing your mission. Now, that's not saying you can ignore your investors, and any person who invests in your company can take you to court if you're not doing things right. But this will keep the IRS off your back and the lawyers off your back if you turn down an opportunity for profit in exchange for your mission statement. And it's a relatively new corporate structure, but it's gaining some headway.
Yeah, well, I would assume too that if you're a mission based company, you're going to take on investors that are aligned with your mission rather
Hmm.
than just ones that are going to be helping you fund to the next round, for
Right.
example. Or same goes
Absolutely.
with the employees and partners and other people that you'd bring on early or throughout the life cycle of that company, right? They're going to be just hopefully just as driven towards that, or it's that extra value add for why they would want to join the company in that respect rather than just looking for a paycheck.
100%. It's about finding people who buy into your vision, both idealistically and monetarily buy into your vision. And there's some serious strength to that and some leeway from your investors when they know you had a rough quarter or you had a rough year, but we made XYZ improvement. You cut out XYZ tons of CO2 if that's your goal. We fed 500,000 children. Whatever their mission statement is, their investors help them achieve it. And I think that's a wonderful kind of symbiotic relationship with investors and mission driven business owners.
What are some other benefits that you find being a mission driven business compared to just a traditional one?
Yeah. So a PBC does provide a legal protection for directors, usually in that company. Once again, the differentiator between a nonprofit and a PBC is PBC still need profit. They still need to grow and they still need to collect that. However, that legal protection, when you're considering the interest of all your stakeholders, and you can honestly prove that you are in the best interest of all your stakeholders, you are allowed to once again get away with some of those business decisions that may not bring in that ROI. The cool thing is the definition of a stakeholder is not an investor. This is kind of the biggest difference with the PVCs versus a traditional setup. A stakeholder doesn't have to be an investor, doesn't have to be a venture capital firm. A stakeholder can be the people your mission is set out for. It can be your community. And if you are acting in the good faith of your mission statement of what you are trying to impact, whatever social or environmental cause that is, and your community are all in aligned, then you're good. If you are taking money for your own profit and your own purpose, that's different. Then you're going down a shady route and you're probably going to get in trouble and ultimately lose your business. But if you manage to stay true to your mission statement and your goal, all of the stakeholders can see that and you provide those updates, then you're good. You're in the green. No one's going to get mad at you, or if they do, they don't have a legal recourse to take action against you for being mad. That the cool thing is when you register as a PBC, um, you literally have to say you have to tell the government your mission business. I'm going to feed kids. I'm going to deliver free books to elementary kids. I'm going to reduce waste in landfills. Whatever that is has to be in your mission statement, and your actions have to be in line with that mission statement, or you can lose your PBC status. Um, now, once again, tangents again. But another pro, I think, is extreme transparency in PBCs. All of those stakeholders I mentioned, whether they're investors, your community, the people you are trying to serve, they have the right and the ability to understand what your company is doing. Financials can be nitpicked in terms of taxes as a PBC, because as you can imagine, it would be very easy to take control and manipulate a PBC. It's already for profit, so you can collect profit. But if you are ignoring your mission statement and your stakeholders for the sake of profit of you and your investors, you can lose that PBC status, and as such, lose your tax status as well. So transparency requirements are extra strict. In fact, so much so that there are third-party auditors set up within the United States who are specifically designed to go into these PBCs and audit their findings, their financials, their projects, and what they've delivered in terms of their mission statement. Um, it can be a pretty intensive process because they want to make sure people aren't defrauding, whatever their stakeholder base is.
So, other than, of course, what you were talking about with it being more rigid and having a lot more oversight, what are some of the other limitations or negatives with going this route?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, Creating a mission driven business has several disadvantages. The biggest one is funding. Um, as anyone who's been around any business for whatever, businesses need money. They need capital to grow, to expand, to get started. And it's while the base of people willing to invest in mission based companies is growing. There are mission based venture capital firms now and other things. It's still a pretty small pool compared to the rest. Um, Typically, you're not going to find the large amounts of money invested in mission based companies either. If they do manage to find one of these mission investment banks or groups, um, the money they receive from them typically would not be the same amount you would receive for the exact same product or business in a non-mission driven business. Therefore, money is always the biggest problem with mission based businesses, and unfortunately, that's the main reason they die, or in extremely unfortunate circumstances, have to give up their mission. Um, for example, I don't know if made is the right word, but I convinced Tanner to read this book. It's called Mission in a Bottle. And it's one of the coolest books I've ever read. I won't go into detail, but it's all in like story or comic book format. It was the first business book I've ever read in my life that was in like a comic format, but amazingly well done. It's the story of Honest Tea and how they got started. I read this book and I was like, these guys are freaking amazing. They had a vision and a dream and truly, honestly believed something in their heart, and they drove for it, and they suffered for it, and ultimately created a successful business. Great story until you Google where Honest Tea is at today. In 2011, Honest Tea sold to Coca Cola. Well, in 2008, Honest Tea sold 40% of their stake to Coca Cola. And by 2011, Coca Cola had controlled the entire company and put it under their product line. And then not too long ago, I believe 2022 or so, Honest Tea was shut down due to oversaturation of the market. Coke shut it down. They're like, it's just not competitive anymore. So these guys who worked since like 1991 or something like that to build this mission driven business based off of something they truly felt believe, they were ultimately forced to sell out. I doubt they would love to hear someone say sell out, but they had to sell in order to keep the the business alive, in order to keep their employees employed and their product on the shelves. And that's kind of one of those unfortunate common occurrences with these mission driven businesses, is it's very easy to be gobbled up by those big guys because you need money.
It seems like it would be really hard to scale. So it's
Hmm.
something where you can build and make an initial impact, but just how unit economics works and how distribution, if you're doing physical products or all these different things, it just you becomes so much more competitive.
Hmm.
And from the story of like Walmart, one of his key things was keep everything lean. And if you have this extra cost or burden in a sense in the business term, it can potentially make you a little bit less competitive in that market. So you have to attach yourself to other entities, which makes you more vulnerable, I guess, in that
Absolutely.
sense.
No, 100%. It's mission based businesses are it's kind of like walking through a minefield, um, blindfolded. There are a ton of traps you can fall in that will tank your company, and it's unfortunate because there's not the support structures underneath to help support businesses like there would be for a typical normal not or for profit company. And not saying that those don't buckle all the time, because they do, but with the mission base, you're exceptionally susceptible, exactly for what you said. Scaling takes money. Scaling takes a lot of money. You know, something I can't recall, there was a specific figure quote. Like if you wanted to scale by 5%, you needed a 10 or 15% increase in your cash flow. That's a hard thing to do when finding money is so difficult. So a lot of mission based businesses focus on angel investors, family and friends, and virality. Going viral as a mission based company is one of the few easy is one of the few ways to gain the base you would typically get when you are dealing with normal distributors, especially like you said, for a product based business. Distribution supply chain is hard. It's hard, it's expensive, and it's a game of who you know. And there's going to be a lot of suppliers out there or a lot of distributors who don't want to deal with you because you're small fries. You won't even gain the attention. You won't be able to get into the stores on the shelves because you're a small fry and you're not backed by much. So it's kind of like every business is an uphill battle, but it's kind of like a mission based business. You're intentionally putting more pressure on yourself. You're making that hill steeper for
You're
yourself.
wrecking it.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah,
strapping on
yeah,
some weights on your back just to.
100%. You are doing it. You put it on extra hard mode. Yeah.
Mhm. So, what are some examples of mission based companies that have really inspired you? You mentioned you're doing a lot of reading on these things. What are some of the key highlights?
Yeah. So for mission based businesses, there's really two that I have really been paying attention. Well, three. Honest teas from that book. I'm in love with their story. I really was glued to that book. But there's two really successful ones going right now, brands that everyone's heard, and I already mentioned the first one, which is Patagonia. If you ever lived in Denver for more than like 2 days, you probably ended up with a wardrobe full of Patagonia. I say that as a Denver native. It's high end outdoors equipment, love it. But what Patagonia did is they I think they got started somewhere in like 1994. I hope I'm not way off, but somewhere around there. And they started out with this 1% mission. They were going to donate 1% of all of their profits every single year to um, earth-based charities, drives, foundations, whatever it is, because once again, their mission, was to we're going to help save the planet. Big goal, boiling the ocean type goal. But in that 1%, since they've opened, they've been able to donate almost $200 million to various charities and clubs and groups that go out and clean up various parts of our planet. And I think that's a wonderful mission. Could they do more than 1%? I mean, maybe but I don't own Patagonia. So what do I know? But the other one, and I think this is really cool. I don't think a lot of people understand that this company is a PBC, public benefit corporation, is Kickstarter. Kickstarter is a mission-based business. Um, Kickstarter uses its platform to help bring creative projects to life, and they focus on a bunch of categories, obviously from film, technology, all of that, film, music, technology. Lots of various things go on Kickstarter, but it provides a place for innovation, creativity, and the arts, and that's their mission: is to support the arts and creative entrepreneurship. And when I learned that Kickstarter was a mission driven business, I'm like, get out. I've bought things off Kickstarter multiple times. I've funded several projects myself. I love Kickstarter, and I just thought it was a nifty website. But to find out that they had a whole mission behind them of helping people create businesses off of art and passion, it really kind of made me sit back and think, what other businesses are out there doing this? So I'm on a search now for other mission-based businesses. There's tons of them out there. Unfortunately, just like their money issue, there's a publicity issue. And unless you're viral or you becoming weirdly successful like Kickstarter or Patagonia, it's easy to fade into the background.
So you've been doing all this research and reading, and you're clearly passionate about it, but why is being mission driven important to Wyatt? Like, why have you been so interested in this?
I've been on this kind of passion kick for a couple months now, and I haven't had enough therapy sessions to fully understand. No, I'm just kidding. To fully understand, but one thing I really stuck with me is I was having a conversation with my wife, and she called me an idealist. And bless my wife's heart, she's a wonderful person, but I don't think she meant that as a compliment. Um, I can be pretty rigid with values and morals, and not saying that mine are better than anyone else's, but I've in my 30s, I've become really good at creating boundaries of my values and morals. Um, I think I became a little too rigid about my values and morals, though, or maybe not, because my wife's like, "You're just an idealist," and sometimes that can hurt you. But I sat back that night and I was sitting in bed and I was like, I'm an idealist. And I couldn't figure out a way to take that statement as a negative. I was flattered by it. And, whatever got rewired in my head from birth, um, it's one thing I've really been passionate about. In my past careers, very early in my career, I was worked in the prison systems. I was a prison guard for a while. And I felt really passionate about that job, which was weird because the job kind of sucked. God, I had some bad experiences as a prison guard. That's for another story. But I really thought I was doing good, and I truly believed in a mission. And then I joined the army. And if you ever wanted to test your morals and values, join the military. Um, but I was able to align my morals and values with what I did, and I truly felt when I went to work every day in the army, if I was deployed or whatever I was doing, when I went to work, I truly felt like I was doing something that I felt was important and really just meshed well with how I view things. Um, and that's carried over into my corporate experience and my career. Um, Not in the same way that I went to work every single day and just like I really am doing something that I find valuable and passionate about, but the opposite is I found situations that made me uncomfortable and things and experiences in the corporate world that I didn't enjoy because it didn't mesh with my values and morals. For example, I won't name any companies by any means. I don't need to open myself up to that. But one kind of tactic that I just grates in me. I hate everything about this tactic is built-in obsolescence, and we've all heard about it. There was a big stink about it several years about iPhones and lots of other tech, built-in obsolescence. And if you're not familiar with built-in obsolescence is, it's the theory that you build a product to only last temporarily so that it either has to be repaired or replaced by the consumer. It's very common and expensive high-end items because once you sell one, if it's perfect and never needs replaced, that company will never get recurring revenue from you, right?
Yeah, it's the same with you mentioned Apple, your iPhone, you have it for a year and then it starts to feel slower than the first year. And then
Hmm.
second, by the
Hmm.
third year, it's failing to load applications. And you're like, well, this thing's crazy fast, but it just doesn't feel that way. So through software or different things, they kind of are always pushing it. So you have to have the more powerful. And
Hmm.
that iPhone that could still make phone calls just doesn't feel quite good enough. So you want to replace it.
And it can become addictive. That's why we're on like iPhone 17 or whatever we're on now. Um, but
So says the Android user there.
Yeah, for real. I don't have my phone right now, but and then the last piece that kind of put all the puzzle pieces in my head together of why mission driven businesses is so attractive to me is as you mentioned, or as we've mentioned on the podcast before, I started a new certification. I got accepted into a certification through Stanford's Graduate School of Business in environmental sustainability, corporate sustainability practices, and it was a crazy class, and it's centered around framing a path for corporations to focus more energy and resources on more eco-conscious endeavors, whether it's reducing carbon footprint, reducing waste, plastic, whatever the situation is, reducing groundwater usage, whatever it is, to be more sustainable ecologically in a corporation. And this course was fascinating, and I just wrapped it up. I'm so excited. It was wonderful. I got to meet, I got, the full attention of like Stanford level, grad MBA professors for a long. It was fascinating. I loved every second of it for someone who really didn't care about college. But all of these experiences, my own personal beliefs, and this certification really made me think. So I ended this course and these classes loving everything I learned, but frustrated. And I shared this in my final survey, and I met with one of the cadre from the course, and I told them, I was like, this is all wonderful. I don't buy it. And they're like, excuse me. I was like, I've worked in the corporate world for a long time, been to many different companies. I can't think of a way I can convince a corporation to spend more money on conservation or eco consciousness because there's no profit in it. And they're like, well, yeah, that's kind of the catch 22 of it all, is you really have to sell it, or there really has to be an impetus for it. Usually that impetus being new laws. Um,
Or public relations, something
Public
along those.
relations can be huge. If you go and kill a bunch of ducks by spilling oil in the oceans, you might have a big eco conservation project lined up next year. Things like. But consumers aren't dumb. No one thinks BP is being eco-conscious because they donated or they planted 1 million trees in the rainforest. No one's like, oh, BP must be really doing a lot for the environment. The consumers are not stupid. Um, and I don't think that satiates that need. But if you can find a way to make it beneficial for the company, then you can really sell it on there. Ignoring all that, you have this structure in PBCs and mission based companies. Their entire job is that. It's not just about the profit, it's about doing better for people, doing better for a community, doing better for wildlife, doing better for water and global warming and trash and all of these wonderful things that can make you all, warm and tingly inside. That is their main driver. And this just clicks with me. And I can't really put it into great words. I feel I'm saying a lot of words, but not good words. I see value in people creating companies designed to make the world better, not just designed to make them more money.
If there's one thing that we haven't discussed yet that you really want the listener to take away and think about, what would that be?
I want people to evaluate what they find important in life, especially if you're listening to this podcast. Because if you're listening to this podcast, chances are good you're interested in business or entrepreneurship. Think about what your goal is. If your goal is to make a bunch of money by Google buying you in a couple years, that's fine. I'm not here to say that you're bad or you're immoral or anything like that, or you're less than. Absolutely not. I think we've interviewed a lot of wonderful people who unintentionally maybe don't even know that they have mission-based businesses because they're setting out to do good. And if there's anything, I just want people when they're starting the entrepreneurship process or in the entrepreneurship process to ask themselves if their business aligns with their values and morals. And if they feel they are giving back to the people who made them, and that could be your community, your stakeholders, your children, whatever the situation is. I think giving back is more than just a marketing stunt. It's more than just something to put on a commercial that you planted some trees. Doing real good. This is probably the only reason I like Mr. Beast. I'm not in Mr. Beast's age demographic to watch on YouTube, but I love Mr. Beast because the dude's rich as hell, but he's always genuinely doing nice things. And he may do crazy stuff like blow up Lamborghinis or whatever for his views. That's how his business works. Awesome. Love it. Um, but in exchange, he also has like this Mr. Beast philanthropy. It's a whole other channel where they're building entire houses and schools in foreign countries. And I think he has like 15 of his own food banks in North Carolina where he lives. And like he does all of this stuff on the side that is profit. And that's wonderful because he then takes that and he takes his goals and focus and what's important to him and puts it into philanthropy. And that's why I truly like Mr. Beast. There's a lot of people on YouTube who do a lot of things with lots of money. I don't care for them because it's just flashy. It's just money. And oh, look at my new Lamborghini or, my 15th Tesla or whatever the situation is. I just want people to look at themselves and their values and beliefs and say, is my business in line with that? And if it's not, and you're okay with that, fine. Once again, I'm not the moral police here. But if that bugs you a little bit, that maybe you're doing something that doesn't quite align with your morals and values, imagine how successful and motivated you will be in your business if everything aligns. Your profit driven ventures, your morals and values, everything is going in the same direction. Imagine how peaceful and smooth everything will run.
But it's going to be hard work
Oh
because
god,
again,
it's going to be obscenely hard
you're
work.
strapping those weights on walking up that steep hill.
And it is hard to say start a mission driven business. Transforming a business into a mission driven business is easier than starting a mission driven business.
Interesting. I
Yeah,
never
I
really
know.
thought of that aspect of it.
Right? Say you had a successful private privately owned business and you decided to transfer over into a PBC format and redo your mission statement and your tax documentation and all of these things. It's easier to do that because you have everything set up already. All you're doing is doing some paperwork and changing how you operate. To start a mission driven business, you are going to have to go to the ends of the earth sometimes to find people who share your missions and values and have the dough that want to help you out. Uh, Money is king in business, and it doesn't matter if you have a phenomenal idea that's going to save the world or it's just going to make you billions of dollars. You still have to sell your idea to people, and you still have to get the money to start it.
Thanks for putting this all together, and thanks for explaining it all. If you're listening to this and you're interested in that, or if you have any things that your core values or a mission you want to do, type it in the comments, reach out to us, email us, ping us on social media. We'd love to hear about that. We're also connecting with all sorts of people across here in Nebraska. So we'd love to help
Mhm.
bring people together in that regard. So maybe there's some that share those similar values where you can build things together, or you can try to find someone to invest and help grow that mission for you. So
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Think of what your community needs. Last shout out, I'm going to do it again. The book's called Mission in a Bottle by Seth Goldman and Barry Nailbuff. It's a little older, obviously, now that they've sold to Coca-Cola, but strong, strong recommendation to read. It's a comic format, threw me for a loop, but the value in it, this whole thing is earmarked, just earmarks and highlighters and crazy stuff because throughout their comic book style, it's just awesome nuggets of business value and hard lessons they learned. So
yeah,
great
and you can pick it
recommendation.
up used for just a couple of dollars. That's what I did
Mhm.
on Amazon, and it actually came in autographed by the author. So I don't know if it was
I know. I'm jealous. I didn't know
from his
that.
company, one of his employees, it looks like he gave to, but I thought that was a little fun thing from ordering from a thrift
That
store.
that is funny. That's fantastic. Good find.
Yeah.
But anyways, thanks for these questions, Tanner. I
Yeah.
this is something I've become pretty passionate about and will only keep studying and learning. So.
Yeah. Well, and thanks to everyone who listened. We will see you all next week. Bye.